Hello, hello. It's Meg Slay and Trev Lewis. And so we have a couple topics that we're going to be talking about today. Trev,
Well, first, tell the folks, what are we
Yes.
doing? What is this? What's this called, Meg?
Oh, yeah, this is called Side Chats. So I guess it's kind
And
of,
how many have we done?
this is our second one.
That's right. It's exciting.
And
So,
the reason why you're
yes.
asking me these questions is because you're the broadcast journalist major person, and I'm the art major who just so happened to stumble into politics, and that's kind of how we met.
And you've
But,
been
yeah,
regretting
so
that
we-
decision ever
Yeah.
since.
Yeah.
No.
And so, yeah, we have our second side chat. And this is kind of like our soft launch to a show that we're going to be starting in the near future. This is our way of kind of getting used to recording and getting scheduled and things like that. So, which I think we both have difficulty with to a degree because we both have ADHD. So that's always fun.
Amongst a litany of other diagnoses and symptoms
yeah.
and comorbidities and et cetera, et cetera. Yes, it's one of the
Right.
things on the laundry list of issues I have with my brain, which I'm sure most of our followers, listen, I see the comments you guys write. I know I'm not alone in that. Most of our followers can relate. There's a
Right.
whole lot of mental instability out there amongst us.
It's like, is it really us or is it just society?
Good question, Meg. I always like to
Right.
blame anything but myself, so I'm all on board about blaming
Just
society.
blame
and
society. It's not
anybody
me, it's
else.
society.
Exactly. But as Meg was saying, this is our second official Solidarity side chat. We're still figuring out the introductions. We're still figuring out the formula, but that's kind of the point of it. It's a little
Yes.
lax. It's a little fun. It's a little, we're just
Loosey-goosey.
chatting. It's a side chat. Yeah. It's imagine you're on our back porch drinking some sweet tea together, just shooting the shit.
Aw.
That's what it is. That's what it is. And so
I love
for this
that.
episode, we have two main topics that everybody's talking about. We asked you for your feedback, and you wrote a lot of things in response, primarily on Facebook. The first being Elon has officially killed Twitter. The second being UFOs, aliens amongst us, official congressional hearings on the topic. We asked you your thoughts on that as well. And so those are the two big stories this week. We're going to start with Elon Musk has officially killed Twitter. What do I mean by killed? Well, it's been a slow, steady, miserable, painful. Like the bird is on a sidewalk bleeding out. It's been this way it's like the little blue bird got hit by a
Train.
or a
Yeah.
Kia Sedona or whatever.
Space
Is that
rocket.
a soccer
blew
mom
up.
was rushing to get her kids to soccer practice, and
It was
she hit the
crossing the
bird.
street, and one of Elon Musk's Teslas hit it.
There you
Yeah,
go. Yeah,
sounds
Tesla on
right.
autopilot hit it like it
Yeah.
does children and other pedestrians. And so the bird has been bleeding out on the sidewalk for weeks now. But the reason we say he's officially killed it is, in fact, because it is officially no longer Twitter. It is something much dumber, just much worse in every way. It is simply called, like Elon's wives, X. Like every single one of his wives, X.
Yes.
And like some of his children, I think, X.
Yeah.
And also like one of his Teslas, Model X, and also his space company,
SpaceX.
SpaceX. Wow, I'm sensing a theme here. And the
Right.
theme is an obsession with stupidity. And that stupidity is naming things the letter X. I think Elon is Gen X. And so I'm not
just
saying
too much X.
it's too much X. It's too much of it. And I'm not saying that he's directly doing it as an homage to being Gen X, but what I'm saying is that generation, like if you look at the app itself, initially the design, it had like a grunge, like it had those stupid like streaks on it to make it look grunge. The final one doesn't. It's cleaner looking. But this is the idea of what someone from Gen X, like 90s, thought was cool, like X. It's just that whole like Sirius XM, was it like that's when the XM brand launched as well,
yeah.
satellite radio. Like the idea of an X and it being outer spacey, and like this is a holdover from a guy who is among Gen X and is having a midlife crisis and is just obsessed
1000%.
with an outdated concept of what's cool, what's new, what's hip. It's just embarrassing. And so this is where we're at. I'll tell you on my end, I swiftly turned off auto updates. So on my phone, Twitter is alive again, bleeding out, but nevertheless still breathing. There's a little bird heartbeat, and it's very sad, and I'm mourning it every night, wondering when I'm truly going to lose my friend, because eventually he's going to cut off support for the old version. And there is some hope, however, in that if you're at least iPhone user, Meg, I know you have Android, so maybe you can figure it out on that side of the world.
Yeah.
On the iOS side of things, there is a built-in app called Shortcuts, and you can look this up. Maybe later on we can do a video, a tutorial or something. But other people have already. If you have the Shortcuts system app developed by Apple, you can actually create your own shortcut that launches Twitter. And when you create a shortcut on your phone, you can choose what the icon picture is, and you can name it. So people have started creating shortcuts. And so as far as the phone's concerned, it's a shortcut to open X, and the shortcut's name is Twitter, and the icon is the original Twitter app icon. And so it functions exactly the same. And that is the workaround people who sadly forgot to turn off auto updates or just didn't pursue that avenue. So we are in desperate times. And Meg, I don't know. Has it updated on your phone? Did it happen for you?
It did.
What are your
initial?
What'd you do?
Maybe we're gonna kind of get into the UFO thing later, and maybe it's because of that though. But I put like X and Threads next to each other, so it's X Threads, and I was like, oh, it kind of feels like X Files, I don't know. But yeah, I
see the desperation. We're trying to make the most of it. We're being it's Stockholm syndrome, it's gaslighting, it's all sorts of manipulation that we're just trying to make the most of a bad situation, which is we live in a time in a world where a unstable billionaire can have a midlife crisis and take it out on the rest of the world by stumbling his way into accidentally buying, in my opinion, what was the best social media app. None of them are good. None of them are great. None of them are super healthy, but it was my favorite, and it was a lot of people's favorites, and it was the app you went to see what exactly was going on in the world day to day. Like there's nothing like it really. And now it is just a sad, desperate situation. So, Meg, you just mentioned Threads.
Yes.
I think the question a lot of us are asking right now is what's next? Is if it's officially killed, which it looks like this is truly like the final hour of whatever's left of what used to be Twitter and is now a miserable thing called X. What is the future? Has the app that is going to replace Twitter even been released? Is it Threads? Is it BlueSky? Is it none of those? Is it something that hasn't been invented yet? I myself am on BlueSky, and I've spent a little bit of time over the past, I think, month maybe or so. It might have been longer actually now. Meg, I know you are on both. You're on BlueSky and you created a Threads, which I have not done yet. So I'm curious, what are your initial thoughts on Threads? Is it the Twitter replacement? Is it something else entirely? Does it even have a future? I was reading that participation on it has already declined by like 70% or something.
Yeah,
a lot of people complaining about the algorithm, Meta's algorithm, Facebook's algorithm, Meta, whatever you want to call that silly company. Is like it's real pushy with like sponsored and influencers. And so what has been your initial experience with Threads?
So the first day, I think it was super exciting. I think that was July 7th. Everyone was like, oh yeah, Threads made all of their things, that was great. And I think now it's declined 70%, like you mentioned. And I don't know why exactly. Maybe it's just because like it's tied to your Instagram account and you can automatically follow the people you're following on Instagram. And then I remember seeing somebody kind of point out like the people that you follow on Instagram aren't necessarily the same people you want to follow on Threads. So that could be one reason that might have been a bad call. But the other thing that I noticed is that it doesn't have a really good user interface. And I think that like with Meta having so much money as it does, they would actually like improve that a lot more. And I think that that could be turning
I
right.
mean,
Like I mean,
now
how
you and I
much money
both
do they
know.
have?
You and I both know we use Facebook every day.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We know damn well
I could
how.
tell. So like I don't know who I need to talk to, but I could tell them exactly all of the problems on all of their apps. You know,
Yeah,
being like, this is like shit. You need to change
it
this
is.
because
It is
I mean,
embarrassing.
yeah,
Some of
like
the
okay,
things.
on Threads they don't have hashtags as far as I know. They don't have the ability to search for terms last time I checked. So that's automatically limiting you greatly to only the people that you have on Instagram, essentially, or anyone people that you're like, hey, I do want to kind of follow these. Now, say that like you made threads, I interact with your threads. They might show up in other people's feeds, more so probably if they retweet it rather than just like it. But it's
Retweet.
very secluded in that sense where it's like you can't search like I don't know, Star Trek or Star Wars or whatever and just like find those fans, right? Those people you want to connect with and like those communities. So I think that that's something that's holding threads back, and that's something that should definitely be fixed. And then with Blue Sky, uh, you mentioned that I'm on that as well, and I think that you're more active on that. But I think that that's really a good app. But I think kind of when Threads came out, it kind of pulled the rug out from under Blue Sky in some ways, right?
Well, the thing
Because
about it is, Blue Sky is still invite only, and we'll talk about
yes,
that in a second because I kind of want to devote a couple minutes to just telling people that
hmm
situation. But with Threads, you're right.
yes,
Threads immediately went public. It just like they slapped it together really quickly. They tied it to your Instagram account, and so you have to have an Instagram account in order to have a Threads account. So in that way, it's kind of like how Apple Watches pair with a phone, although I guess that's a bad analogy now because they are separate things. You can have the watch, and it's not. But when the Apple Watch first came out, it was like it could only exist as a companion
hmm
to your phone. It was a glorified accessory, not as rather than its own standalone device. And that's kind of what Threads is it's more of an accessory to Instagram. It's like this little outfit Instagram put on, and it's like Instagram dressed up as Twitter for Halloween very badly
yeah.
on a budget, like a mom that didn't really love it, and it's just like, here's a pillowcase, you're a ghost.
Oh God.
That's my analogy for what Threads did to it, and what Meta did to try to
Yeah,
counteract.
they did. They should put like another week of thought and
Well, at
application
least
and
that would have doubled the amount of thought that went into it.
yeah,
But
it could have been so much better. I mean, I have hope, but like still,
the
kind of
thing
like
of
you
it
said,
is, regardless of design or function
yeah.
or any of that, even if they made a great, well designed, whatever, there is no world where Facebook's leadership can create something that replaces Twitter, because one of the
hmm
key foundational things of Twitter is it has a lot more liberty with what you're allowed to say, with what you're allowed to post. There's uncensored adult content
hmm
on it, and speech-wise, I mean, we all, if you spend any amount of time on Instagram or Facebook, you know how absurd and ridiculous what they call their community standards system is. You know how dysfunctional, it's all automated, it's miserable, and so, you could jokingly say to a friend, "Oh my God, I would kill somebody for that outfit." And then
hmm
Facebook's moderator will go, "You just threatened to murder somebody, and we're
Yeah, right.
sentencing you to prison, and we're taking you off to like Mark Zuckerberg's gulag, and they take you right back, and they shoot you for saying common English phrases because that's how dumb the
Yeah.
automated censorship." And no app that engages in things like that is ever going to replace Twitter, because Twitter, not only will Twitter not censor you for saying something as innocuous as "I would kill to have that outfit," half the time it doesn't even catch you if you say you're actually going to kill for real, kill somebody, unless somebody reports you directly. There's not a lot of automated censorship, and what we have learned, I think, over the past 5 years is automating censorship on social platforms is a bad way to do it, and you really should rely
Yeah.
on the community. That's what these apps, as much as these idiots like Spez over on Reddit or Mark over at Facebook or even Elon over at Twitter, as much as these dumb tech douchebags refuse to admit it, the people, the community are what makes these apps what they are. We know what it should be. We know what it shouldn't be. And at the end of the day, we decide. We decide if these apps are sink or swim, which is transitioning over a little bit to BlueSky. Why I think that one has the most promise. BlueSky was started by some of the people that were originally with Twitter, not even as a competitor or replacement to it. It was already in the works before Elon took over. And BlueSky, the idea of it is to make it a more open source, it remains to be seen if any of this will ever pan out, by the way. But the idea was to create a social media app that actually functions as a public square that doesn't have as much like of a single person or a single entity deciding what it should be or if it should be profitable and all these sorts of things. It was supposed to be this more open source kind of. It seems a little utopia. It's fantasy, sort of unrealistic kind of thing. But that was the goal, and you know what? It's a noble goal, and why not try to build an actual public square, town square kind of thing that isn't as ruled by a single corporate entity and that isn't about driving profits of the algorithm. Maybe there should be something that's a little more publicly run, and that's the goal with it. The idea is to have your own algorithm. I don't know if that makes sense to people, but like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, there's one main algorithm, and it consistently shows you things that you don't want. And if you go on BlueSky, you can subscribe to different algorithms. And so one is like,
oh, really?
Yes. Now they've just started rolling it out. I mean, the thing about it is this thing is still being built, but yes, you can subscribe to like a specific cat algorithm. And so it's a feed of just the cat accounts, or you can subscribe to what's hot. That's the trending. That's like the actual main popular feed.
Okay.
You can subscribe to an algorithm that's specifically only people you follow. What a novel concept. Only see content from the stuff you signed up to see.
Yeah.
That used to be what it was, and now every algorithm is dominated by sponsored, forced content. Well, on BlueSky, at least one of the algorithms you can subscribe to is only from people I follow. And the company makes their own for you to use. Also, users have the ability to design their own. So the community has a hand in designing their own algorithms as well. And so I saw some community created ones like, hide the stuff of like re-shares, like reposts or whatever, only show me original posts, or like filter out replies, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the beauty of BlueSky. I think it's why it has a lot of promise, is it's giving the community, at least in its early days, more power and more of a say in what it actually is and the content people want to see. And I think for that reason alone, BlueSky has a lot of promise. Now, the question people are going to ask is, wow, Trev, that sounds really cool. How the hell can I get on this damn thing? Because I've heard people talk about it, or maybe you haven't. What is it? Where is it? How can I? Unfortunately, it's still being built, which, you know what, credit to them. I think they're trying to do it right. They're trying to make sure this thing actually functions well and is as safe as it can be. They've received some criticism because some people have gotten in that are decidedly not safe or helpful to the community, but I really think they're trying their best, at least, and I cut them some slack, and it's taking them a while, but I think for good reason. So unfortunately, the only way to get on BlueSky right now is through an invite. Somebody who's already on there has to send you an invite code, and you're like, well, how is that ever going to happen? I'll tell you what, I sent out a desperate plea to people. This is even before Twitter truly took a dive, and I was like, I need, for my mental health, I'm going to my doctor, I'm getting a medical note that says I need an invite to BlueSky, and I'm going to mail it to corporate headquarters over there, whatever their headquarters are. And a friend of mine that I've known for years, but I never in a million years would have expected to have a BlueSky invite code. I guess he runs some like popular regional soccer social media account.
Oh, really?
And they had enough of a presence that somebody from BlueSky or whatever sent out an invite, and so-and-so knew so-and-so, and it just trickles down like that. And so I got an invite code from a friend that I had no idea would have had an invite code. And so my suggestion to all of you out there, one, grovel, beg, particularly for me and Meg, because we're both on it. So we get invite codes every 2 weeks or something. It's ridiculous.
Everyone's going to be messaging us.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Listen, we'll deem you worthy.
Code?
We'll deem you worthy. We'll deem you unworthy. But I think it's real strict. It's like one code every 2 weeks. So like twice a month, we're allowed to invite one person. So, shoot your shot. I mean, that's clearly the advice I'm giving you. Grovel, beg. The more you beg, the more grovelly and pathetic it is, the more I enjoy it. I'm a sadistic in that way. And so that's how you can get through to me. Now, Meg might have a different style, but I'm just telling you, my number one advice, if you want to get on BlueSky, just keep begging. The more desperate, the better. Worked for me.
No, I did something super similar. I posted on Twitter, I think I scheduled out tweets to go out every couple hours, basically just begging. And within the first day, somebody responded, total stranger. They follow me on BlueSky. I follow them, forgetting their name, but they messaged me and basically was like, here's a code. And I was kind of like, I hope I'm not getting scammed, because I didn't know what I was kind of getting myself into at that point.
Right.
But yeah, it worked. And the person was basically saying you just seem like a cool person. So here's the code, make sure that whoever you invite is also a really good person, just to build this community out and everything like that. So I was like, wicked, awesome. Let's go. And so it works, if you really want to get into the community and you're a decent person online, then you're probably going to go and get an invite code. But yeah, so same story essentially.
Yeah. And so that's the only way to get on there now. Again, eventually, that's not the way it's designed forever. It's just in the early days while they build it out. I think it's a clever idea. I wish they would give us some more invite codes. I wish we could bring in more people. But listen, trust the process. It's, to my mind, it's the only thing right now that even comes close to potentially being there. And by the way, now that Elon's torching the Twitter brand, can he just give it to them? Can we just, the folks, let's just call it for what it is. This is the new and improved Twitter. We can all finally seek refuge, flee X, the miserable X app, and just call it Twitter. Just give him Elon, you don't want the brand. You clearly, you don't want Twitter. Give it back to the BlueSky team. Let's call it Twitter. Let's create the new Twitter and we could all be happy.
Well, what's funny too, just talking about branding and everything too. I mean, think about the early kind of social media apps, Facebook, Twitter. They were more blue, and then now we have all of these apps coming out. So we have TikTok, Threads, X. They're all this black and white, it's just they all look the same. Give me some color. Why is everything black?
That's right. As I stand before a wrinkled black curtain as a background. It's just the easiest way, no matter where I'm at recording from, I can just throw up a black whatever, and then it's a blank template. But no, I agree with you. It's kind of interesting how they all follow each other that way. And Instagram is the only one that's still this kaleidoscopic, spectrum-y gradient. Yeah. Reddit is holding on strong as orange and it's ugly stuff. But Snapchat's still yellow. You're right. Threads within the same span of Threads, X, etc. That's good observation.
Kind of the black and white.
Yeah. So let us know what you guys think about all of this. Has Elon truly killed Twitter, or is it somehow going to recover? Is he going to finally get booted out? I don't know if that is even possible, or is he going to finally give up and realize everybody hates him? That is the question. Let us know your thoughts. And have you been on BlueSky already? Have you been on Threads? What are your initial experiences? We're very curious to see how other people feel about this and what they think the path forward is. Because, social media is not going anywhere.
Bracket. Do a bracket. Which social media site are you
on? Which one will still be alive by the end of this? That's a good idea. So that being said, we have one other major story to talk about you in this side chat, and that is, of course, the UFO Congressional hearings. Yes. Meg, you can offer, I think, some initial recap of this.
Yeah, so this was the thing that I kind of thought was interesting, because not only do they have the U.S. The congressional hearings going on right now, but I also was hearing about the Senate bill, which is Senate Bill 2226, and it essentially is in the military budget. They're allocating some funding towards like, you know, if there's any kind of like found alien craft or like, non-biological life forms or stuff like that, like they get eminent domain, so they get to, have ownership over it and things like that. I thought that was kind of interesting. And the reason why I thought it was interesting is just because it's essentially happening at the same time as UFO hearings. And now there were some UFO hearings, or some kind of, I don't know. I think they were hearings as well, like last summer, 2 summers ago. Do you remember them at all?
I remember
kind of briefly, like it wasn't
very
a
briefly.
lot.
There were some articles being published about how it was like declassifying some documents or something. That's what it was. Yeah,
yes,
they've been on this track for a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, I think people are kind of like, well, where is this coming from? And, I asked a question to my followers earlier and I said, what do you think that the UFO hearings might be distracting us from and everything? And somebody did bring up that point, basically like saying like, well, they've been kind of doing some of this UFO kind of stuff for a while now. So, it's not like completely out of the blue, but I think just like everyone was so distracted by like COVID and kind of recovering from that, they didn't really pay attention to it. But then with the UFO hearings, what was interesting is essentially the reason why they're having the hearings is just to improve the way that they handle any kind of future UFO craft. And of course, they're not calling it UFOs. I'm forgetting the terminology that they're actually using. It's like UAPs or something like that. UFOs, it's just, everyone knows what that is. So we're going to stick with that. But, if there was ever an UFO that somebody comes across, like how are they going to go about reporting it? How is the U.S. going to respond? Things like that. So this is kind of what the hearing is essentially about. Now, some of the testimony are from military, I think former military, who are saying like, yeah, like we've definitely had experiences with alien craft before. And then there was even a whistleblower that was essentially saying, and this was kind of like the drama of these hearings, is like, oh yeah, like the U.S. has actually hidden, the Pentagon has hidden the fact that they've recovered non-human biological like remains from crash sites. So that's like, like, what kind of.
But has that
zone?
person, because I was reading that, first of all, the Pentagon refutes these claims, obviously, which we knew they were going to. But I've had a lot of people question the credibility of this person and the evidence that was submitted. Because as far as I know, and clarify for me if you can, there was no solid like evidence presented. It was just claims,
no, it's
right?
Just testimony. Testimony. Yeah. Like,
right.
I mean, oh my gosh, like if anyone's like, hey, this is an alien and brought that out, like, Marjorie with like her, like, here's like the nudes and stuff, like, like that kind of stuff with Hunter Biden. I mean, if they had done that with aliens, how many people would be on like online talking about it? Or just like, even just like kind of like, we need to go and like, go pixel by pixel and see if this is real or not on this footage or this film or whatever, or is this a prop? I feel like this is going to get off a tangent like a little bit, but I kind of feel like that's the scariest thing about like the future is like how, especially with AI, is like, how are we going to prove things are real versus not real? Because what if, hypothetically, they were bringing out some like alien stuff? Like it would just, I guess it would be kind of like how people approach the moon landing. Like, oh, that wasn't real.
That's true. There will always be that. That's true.
Right. But it's like, I think that this is kind of like going back. This is kind of why we do need to start paying attention to who we're electing and making sure that they actually know what's going on with technology. because if they have no clue what's going on, then they're not going to be able to go and enact laws that can actually handle and combat technology and handle it and treat it the way that it needs to be treated and legislated. So, that's the end of my tangent. Back to
So what do you
UFOs.
think the timing of it is? I've seen some people like, why now? Why is this happening now? What do you think about?
I really don't have a theory on that, to be honest. That's a good question. Do you have any theories?
I always have theories. I always have theories. But we also ask our followers. I'm
Yes.
curious on your end, because I know I got a feel for from my followers how they felt about this issue. It's kind of bleak.
Yeah.
I see the consensus from people who follow me is along the lines of, even if they're real, dude, we can't pay rent. Like, who cares? Like,
We're all tired.
This is the attitude, which I totally get it. It's like, okay, we're just stressed and we still have to go to work. Like, do I have to go to work tomorrow? If so, I do not care. That's the
Yeah.
sentiment. I mean, people
You know
really
what
are
it is?
tired.
You
What
know
is
what
it?
it is? Okay. It's honestly just given our experience with COVID, if there was an alien invasion, it'd be like, hey, you still need to come into work.
Right. Like, we're not shutting down. Like, Arby's needs to get their roast beef into mouths.
Yeah.
Okay. So we
Yeah.
need you here. You're working a double. There's actual UFOs. Like, you can see them through the lobby window. It doesn't matter. We need roast beef. So you're
Right.
coming to Arby's. You're fulfilling your
I
shift.
like how this just turned into a commercial for Arby's.
Well, they're going to be the last one standing, because I'll tell you what, I don't know who
Right.
is keeping Arby's alive, but
Who are
they
you? Show yourself.
they have managed to survive despite the fact that I don't know a single person that eats it on a regular basis. And
Yeah.
that's why I predict that even in the midst of an alien invasion, somehow Arby's is going to be open. They're going to have a drive-through, and that is what will happen in that event. But I agree with everybody. The feeling, I totally get the exhaustion with the current state of everything, the fact that you still have to live your daily lives. Nothing is truly shutting it down. These hearings certainly aren't. So I understand that. I also have a tremendous amount of skepticism, and I'll read to you from this article that I just pulled up today, originally published in the New York Times, but way back in 1997. Okay, so this is going back quite a ways. This is the article from the New York Times is titled "CIA Admits Government Lied About UFO Sightings." And you can look this up. The author was William J. Broad. So you can pull it up for yourselves. It's still there. It's public record, officially from the New York Times, okay? So it's not some fringe conspiracy. The CIA study said that the Air Force knew that most UFO reports back during the initial Cold War, the original Cold War, officially the only Cold War, but I think we all know what's happening right now, so I call it the first Cold War, the original. The Cold War during the conflict between the Soviets and America, the CIA said that the Air Force knew that most UFO reports during this period by citizens and aviation experts were based on fleeting glimpses of U-2 and SR-71 spy planes, which fly extremely high. Okay, so the deceptions were made in the 1950s and 60s amid a wave of these sightings because the government did not want to actually reveal that war spycrafts were actually buzzing around and conducting these things. And so it was a way to divert people's attention away from the fact that technology was being developed for some real intense high-tech conflict, and also not to reveal our sort of intelligence capabilities with spycrafts and so on and so on. The most recent example I have to compare that to is with the Titan submersible, the rich idiots that went down to see the Titanic. We knew the same day. James Cameron confirmed this on live television. I love that it's James Cameron. He's,
Right.
but it's the dude knows what he's talking about, and he confirmed they knew. We had military technology down there that detected the sound of an implosion. the day that happened. And the reason there was multiple days of media hysteria, they had like countdowns for their oxygen on like CNN or whichever networks, is because partially U.S. Navy didn't want to reveal that we had that tech down there for intelligence purposes. But then, of course, James Cameron goes live on the air, and they reveal in the end that we knew and we have technology down there. And so it's like a good example of, for several days, people were like speculating about whether this submersible is still down there, whether there's survivors, and the truth was no, we knew immediately, thanks to military technology, that they blew up. And similar thing with the UFOs, my suspicion is we're now entering territory that resembles much of the feelings, much of the environment of the previous Cold War, where space technology and aircrafts are being developed. And you can also pull up many examples in the media recently of the United States sort of panicking that China and so on are developing aircrafts that rival our own, particularly with concern to space. China's space exploration and technology has received tremendous funding in recent years, and they're developing capabilities that rival our own in terms of any kind of spacecraft. And so I think it's far more likely that the UFO stuff is a diversion. I really do, not to be overly skeptical, but I think most likely what this is, and I'm not going to say I know exactly what they're diverting from, and from what I've read, I don't think anybody can confirm for sure that there's a specific conflict or spacecraft that they're diverting from. We don't have that information yet. So, I mean, this is truly a guess. I do want to clarify that. I'm not claiming to know anything. But based on previous history, which the whole point of learning history is to not let it repeat itself, during the Cold War, UFOs were used as a diversion so that when people saw new spacecraft, spycraft technology flying around, the alarm bells weren't sort of raised in that way. And also, it's just a nice way to distract people from what the military is actually developing, from what they're actually planning. So if, in fact, a new Cold War is being developed and they are planning for this and these spacecrafts or whatever, we have a nice distraction and diversion, say, oh, it's probably aliens, it's probably a UFO, rather than just tell people, by the way, we are totally trying to go to war with whoever, and this is actually the technology we're developing. So to me, it feels like they're laying the foundation for sort of plausible deniability down the road when people start spotting some new things that they don't recognize in the sky. To me, it feels... Here's the other theory, though. It could just be some crackpot weirdo, which is what some people have said, who gave a testimony. Yes, technically he's a former government official, whatever. But as we all know, people can work in the government and not have a clue.
Still be crazy.
And not have a clue.
Yeah.
In fact, our government currently seems to incentivize people who are batshit crazy, lunatics, and stupid.
I can't wait to run for something.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
But no, I mean...
That's my thoughts.
Yeah, no, kind of going back to what you were saying, like, people were basically saying they think that the hearings are happening right now because, the temperatures we've been having this summer, the ocean surface temperatures, nuclear escalation, union movements, COVID spikes. It's just like kind of like a new section of we didn't start the fire. We just have a lot of things going on right now that is kind of exhausting, I think. Yeah. And so, maybe this is kind of like, here's your bread and entertainment. I mean,
right.
We're not even getting bread, but we're getting entertainment in a way. But I don't know, now what you're saying with what you just kind of said is like, essentially it's about like warfare, right?
Yeah. So I'm not so conspiratorial like some folks that think it's some elaborate distraction from all of the decay around us, global warming and these sorts of things. I think it's very specific in terms of like, there are actual aircrafts, there's actual technology. Like I do think what is being discussed in these hearings exists. I think the technology exists, the spacecraft exists Based on what I've read and previous history, like the New York Times article and the CIA openly admitting that our government has in the past deliberately lied about UFOs to disguise military technology and divert people away from knowing what's going on in terms of warfare. I think that's to me, that seems the most logical, again, just based on the precedents that have already been set, things that our government has done in the past. I don't think it's a coincidence that we are now entering territory that resembles a new Cold War against China and Russia for the first time since the original, right? And I don't think it's a coincidence that when the original Cold War was happening, that's when a lot of UFO sightings were happening and a lot of stories about UFOs were being published, which the CIA has since admitted. We published stories about UFOs to not tell people about these specific aircrafts and technology and spy, et cetera. And so I think, do I see any reason not to believe that's exactly what's happening again? I don't. I think it's too much of a coincidence that from one Cold War to the next, from one conflict to the other, just as tensions are escalating again in a very similar way. I'm not saying the parallels, are exact between our current situation and what was happening back then, but a lot of parallels, pretty strong. So that is, again, but I don't know for sure. I'm not going to say I'm not going to tell you I have 100% certainty, but if I had to make a guess, if I had to make a video, I would say that is my strongest suspicion that it's not that they're completely fabricating something up like a total distraction from climate change or these sorts of things. No, I think they are talking about aircrafts that exist, technology that exists. I just don't think it's extraterrestrial. I think it is likely some military stuff that they would rather you think is some sort of fantasy, mythical, interesting thing as opposed to, our military is developing some real new scary weapons of war, and they're clearly planning.
Horrors behind, the imagination.
Horrors beyond.
Beyond, my human imagination or something. How does it go? I don't remember.
Man-made horrors beyond my comprehension, something
Thank
like
you.
that.
Yes,
I think that's it.
No, accurate, Tootsie.
Yeah, so I think that's what it is.
Somebody actually said on my comments saying UFOs and ETs right out of the old Soviet misdirection playbook. So
there
right
it
on
is.
the
See?
nose.
So I'm not alone. I agree with whoever that was.
Kind of, history is repeating itself, and probably another reason why they can get away with it is because they don't give us proper educations in the U.S.
Very much so. The awareness of the actual realities of the initial Cold War is low. I mean, it's through multiple generations.
They always focus on World War II, which is valid, but
through multiple generations.
About the Cold War.
No, and even World War II, they were dishonest about our place and all of that, and the United States being the heroes. And we all know, like, your high school textbooks are printed and owned and published by corporations. Like, we all know that all of the information we consume is from a very specific perspective. It's not a working class perspective. That's why we are here at Solidarity Media, to give you at least one option that is from a working class, regular person perspective. That's why we're here. And so I suspect you will not find that angle in the New York Times anytime soon. Decades later, like the original, decades after the fact, they'll publish an article admitting to what they did, but that's decades after the fact. I'm telling you here in the moment, these are our suspicions. Be very skeptical about, don't be a deranged lunatic about your skepticism. Make it a healthy, educated skepticism. There is a huge difference, okay? Automatically disbelieving everything told by authority is not the balance to believing everything by authority figures. Like, there needs to be actual logic and critical thinking involved. If you just automatically revert to everything is a crazy conspiracy, the earth is flat, that's the category you fall into. So we don't want flat earther type skepticism. We also don't want blind, like whatever I just saw on CNN is the truth, allegiance to the official narrative. So join us as we try through the means we have available, which is not much. We try our best to navigate the information that is public and give you the most realistic, grounded perspective we can. That's what it's all about here. Meg, I think on that note,
Yeah.
We have sufficiently covered both topics for this side chat. Let us know again on both topics. Elon destroying Twitter and making my life as miserable as he possibly can. Also, the UFOs, your skepticism now that you've heard our thoughts. Did you change your mind? Do you disagree with everything I just said? You want me to shove it where the sun don't shine? Just let us know.
Yeah, I was going to just say kind of what you were saying is that there's this Latin phrase called sapere aude, and it means dare to know, dare to question things, dare to be wise. And I definitely think that that's a principle that like we really hold dear as a value and everything in Solidarity Media. But you summarized everything up really nicely. I would love to go on an agent-lean tangent, but I'm going to hold myself back. Maybe at a later date. That would
Another
be really
video.
fun. I have theories. But then, that being said, if you love us, support our show, want to be a part of like the creation making process, you can always message us on any kind of social media that we have in the video description. And if you want to go and support Solidarity Media so we can keep on making these shows and, have a source of income coming in so we can actually get our bread.
So I get
and
a
have
real
a
background.
Nice, yes, right, I know. So we can upgrade our backgrounds. You can go to patreon.com/Solidarity Media for $5 a month. That's like buying us a beer. How nice, right? I think beer is probably more expensive, actually.
IPAs.
Yeah.
They go for
we're cheap dates.
That's right.
But that's going to be it for episode 2. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. And I hope you have a great day, Earthlings.
And we will see you all next week.
Yes.